So Beer Mug said a little earlier in this program that he is a history buff. And you know what? I found that interesting because I never really knew this about Beer Mug, but he is a history buff. So I thought it would be funny to have a little segment called Beer Mug, the History Buff. Foon.
I was waiting.
Does it have an intro?
Dave, does it?
I don't have one. Do you have one?
Beer Mug?
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay. Live.
Ba-da-da-da, it's time ba-da-da-da, for the Beer Mug History Buffoon. Ba-da-ba-da-bum-bum-bum-bum. That's the music bed.
I like
that
it.
is right,
like
Omar.
Yeah.
I am, in fact, a history buff. In fact, anytime there's a documentary on television about really anything that happened a long time ago or just recently, I love it.
You mean like history?
Like history in the past.
Okay.
Can I ask you where you got your passion for this? Because I am a guy who cannot sit, so even if it's something interesting, like let's say Pearl Harbor or something that affected America greatly, right? Had a tremendous impact on probably the America that we know now, right? I cannot watch more than 15 minutes. I'm out. So you must be passionate about it. Where did this come from?
I think a little bit comes from Mama Muggs, and she used to be a teacher, a history teacher.
Okay.
And she really enjoys it. But also, I think mainly the main thing is I like to transport myself back to whatever time I'm learning about, just kind of like pretend or imagine or fantasize what it would be like living in those times. Like, if
like during the Hitler times,
except that one. I do not want to.
All right.
I'm good on that one.
Okay.
But like if I'm in New York City, like when we went for Kevin and Bean a long time ago, you see like a historical landmark or like a plaque somewhere. You read about it and you go, wow, and you kind of transport yourself back to that time, right?
See, that's very cool.
So,
I don't have that quality. And Dave, you were there. I think you were there in Vegas when Beer Mug was there, and Beer Mug was giving everybody a history lesson on Vegas. Were you there?
Spouting out facts like, this is where the mob did this. And then he's like, this is where you can get weed. I was like, all right, that's something usful.
I'm a history buff / tour guide.
Truly a Renaissance man, from history to weed, So tell us what you're going to speak about on this episode
well, it's funny. Dave mentioned a little bit of the mob, and that, I think, is the most fascinating part of not only Italian history, and also, there was, I guess, the Jewish mob, and there's a bunch of mobs. There's a bunch of, different cultural crime families. I think that is the most fascinating to see how these people operated. Mostly sociopaths, just doing whatever they wanted, killing at will, and it's crazy how for the longest time in America, the crime families controlled so much of the industry going on.
Disclaimer, Jonathan Beer Mug Kantrowe speaks for Jonathan Beer Mug Kantrowe and not the rest of the Janky Town crew. So, mobs, Jonathan, continue.
Oh, don't worry, Dave. I already cleared it with every single mob, and we're good. So, so it's funny because you guys have seen the film The Irishman, right? Are you guys familiar with that film that came out?
I didn't finish it. It was too long.
It was a 3-hour movie.
Yeah,
it's a 3-hour
4-hour movie. Was it 3 or 4?
It's 3 hours and 19 minutes to be specific.
Yeah.
But that came out in 2019. That was the first Netflix kind of release that they did simultaneously with movie theaters and straight to Netflix. So I watched it when it came out, and then I flipped by it the other day, and it was on, and I was like, whoa, I want to watch this again. This is very interesting. And for those who haven't seen The Irishman, Jankstas, it is about Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters and the Mafia, and Jimmy Hoffa's essentially right-hand man or security guard at the time. But, I was going to do this segment in Don Vito Corleone voice, but that's just going to be too hard, especially since I lost it at the Astros game. So I'm going to do.
How would that have sounded, if you don't mind, just real quick?
So there was Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa had a right-hand man, Frank Sheeran, and Russell Bufalino was the head of the Pennsylvania Italian.
Nope,
Come
you have to do it
on.
like this.
You gotta do it.
You have to do it like
You gotta
this.
do it.
Okay, I'll try.
Oh
I'll try.
man, that's so good.
Because I have to stick out my jowls.
Yeah,
I have to stick out my jowls because that's
that's so good.
what Marlon Brando did when
Yeah.
he played Vito Corleone.
What a
So
hack.
anyway,
So what are we learning today?
so what we learned today, exactly what happened.
I can't. It's too
Oh
hard.
man,
I can't. It's just.
It morphed into something else. Like, how you do?
Wow, that's racist, Dave. That's stereotypical.
I wasn't doing
so-
it. You were.
For many years, you guys have heard like, oh, what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, right? Well, this movie, essentially, it's directed by Martin Scorsese, and he's directed great films, pretty much all based on real life. Like Casino was based on the Italian mafia in Las Vegas in the 70s and 80s. Goodfellas, based on part of the New York crime family in the 70s mostly. And, he did The Departed with Jack Nicholson and Leo. But he takes books or biographies and he turns them into screenplays. So this
I thought
one
you were
was
going
about
to give us the history lesson, not how
I am.
Scorsese makes the movies.
I'm going to tell you. I have to set this up.
Okay.
Thank you, Omar.
Yeah. So everybody for the longest time, was like, what the hell happened to Jimmy Hoffa, right? Do you know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, guys?
He's buried underneath the Yankee Stadium, right?
Right. That was a lot of people thought he was buried under the Giants football stadium in New York. A lot of people thought he was ground up into Hoffy hot dogs in the factory, hence Hoffy. But in fact, Scorsese borrows this story from a firsthand account of Jimmy Hoffa's bodyguard, who was appointed to Jimmy Hoffa by the American crime boss Russell Bufalino. It's a real guy. Real guy, played by Joe Pesci.
Nice name.
Russell Bufalino, played by
Yeah.
Joe Pesci in The Irishman. Robert De Niro plays Frank Sheeran, and Al Pacino plays Jimmy Hoffa. And essentially, Jimmy would get money from he would essentially take money from the Teamsters pension fund, which was covered in the movie Casino and also in The Irishman, and he would take money from the Teamsters pension fund and he would give it to these crime figures to build hotels in Las Vegas. So totally illegal, right? And Jimmy Hoffa was also he just would approve loans for the mafia. And
What rate did they get the loans at? Like,
I think it was like a 11.2%.
Oh man, that's kind of high. I thought he
Yeah,
would give the mobsters a hookup and be like, "Yo, you get 1.2."
That's how they make their money.
They wouldn't make money, right? Yeah.
That's how they make it right. So anyway, there was a lot of corruption within the Teamsters organization and industry, like the garment industry, the dock workers.
Ralph Garment Industry?
Yeah. And
I thought it.
You got a
and
fly
I
in your
did-
head.
Yeah, and I didn't say it, you dumbass. Yeah, that's not brown
I
rice.
got a fly on my head.
so,
my God.
you
got a fly on your head.
There. Oh, that's loud. That one was loud.
besides small businesses like small shakedowns that like in neighborhoods of mom and pop shops, the mafia had their hands in major American industry, and a lot to do with Jimmy Hoffa. So Jimmy Hoffa went to jail for fraud. Okay.
All right.
And he went to jail for fraud for 5 years. And when he came out, there was already his successor of the Teamsters, which was his second in command while he was in charge, was now running things. And what happened is they found that this new guy was easier to deal with than Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa still, when he got out of jail, wanted to reclaim his spot at the top of the Teamsters.
Well, understandably, because this is something he built up, right? And this
He
guy
built it up,
just
yeah.
kind of,
He's
not that this other guy slid in, but I'm sure he paid his dues too. But he rightfully so, he wants to reclaim what was his.
Exactly. So what ended up happening was a lot of the loans that these crime heads would ask for, Jimmy Hoffa would start kind of playing power moves and saying, no, you're not getting that, or we're going to hold that, and you'll see where that comes. And that pissed off a lot of the heads of the families.
So he was just being a big pain in the ass, huh?
Yeah. So then he would go on TV and be like, hey, the new head of the Teamsters is corrupt. There's crime families in his pockets, and like all the guys of the crime families are watching this. Like, is this guy serious? Like, what the hell? Like, he's really talking shit when he used to do the same thing, and now he's going to out us. So he became a major problem. So what happened is Frank Sheeran, his bodyguard, assigned to him for years by Russell Bufalino, was essentially given the order to take him out. And this is all from a book that he didn't write, but he had a writer with him days before his death, and something essentially he almost took to his grave. So he said that when he got the order to kill Jimmy Hoffa, they gave it to him because, what better person to trust than your bodyguard? Like, you would never think, Omar, I'm going to come to work. I'm going to come to K-Rock tomorrow, and Omar's going to just come right into my office and shoot me in the back of the head, right?
No, for sure. You trust this guy.
You never
He's
think
guarding
that.
you. Yeah, absolutely.
So there was always mystery on what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. But in this book, which is called "I Heard You Paint Houses," which essentially mean it's a mob term for you're pretty much a murder for hire. You kill people.
Yeah.
At the behest of whoever is asking you to kill them. And so they asked him to kill him. So what happened is they set up a meeting, right? They set up a meeting outside this restaurant in Detroit where Hoffa lived at the time. And I guess somebody was late. They ended up showing up, Hoffa's bodyguard, Hoffa's stepson in the front seat, and two other like crime figures, like crime associates. And they took him. Dave's calling timeout. The intermission?
Yeah. Hey ho.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Hoffa lived as long as this story.
Yeah, this could have been edited down a little bit.
Do you guys want the history lesson or not?
It would have been more fun if you did that voice, because I'm tuning in and out.
I couldn't do that voice for this long of a story.
No,
long story short.
Yeah, it's
long
too late
story
for
short.
that.
Oh, okay. Now I'm back in. All right, go ahead.
They brought him into the house. Frank Sheeran shot him in the back of the head. They threw him in his trunk, brought him to a crematory, incinerated him, and boom, that was it. That's why they never found him. Anyways, that is the story on the disappearance. Hold on.
That is the story about the disappearance of James Riddle Hoffa.
All
right. So questions.
Well, thanks for your enthusiasm, Dave.
When we asked Muggs to come up with some history lessons, he said, "You know what? I watched The Irishman, so let's go with."
He basically just described the movie. He's like, "Hey,
the movie is based on a true story."
Yeah, but Muggs, I thought you were gonna bring some
from 2019.
I thought you were gonna bring like some like deep things that only you would know, and we would be all like, "Oh yeah," and that's something that's kind of like widespread out there and really recent.
How would I? But
I mean,
you
to
said
be fair,
you're the history buffoon. Well,
yeah,
obviously
now. Most history I learn is not inside information. It's out there in the public knowledge.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it would be something more niche, I guess. Niche.
Yeah, like tell me about Billy Bats. Tell me about Billy Bats and Billy Bats' girlfriend. Like,
I'll tell you about that. You ready?
No.
The relationship between Billy Bats.
Billy Bats was killed by the guy who Joe Pesci played in Goodfellas.
Movies,
right?
Movies.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah,
played in Goodfellas.
they get pissed at him for killing Billy Bats, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and he was a made guy. In real life, Billy Bats was John Gotti's guy. And they killed the guy who Joe Pesci played in Goodfellas because of it.
Let me ask you.
He took out a made guy without permission.
Let me ask you history.
That's a no-no in the mafia.
Let me ask you, history buffoon. Do you gain any of your knowledge by actually reading books, or are all these just
TV.
movies?
I read the info on the TV guide or whatever, the program guide.